Buenos días.
Good morning, everyone.
En nombre del Real Instituto ElCano,
So, in behalf of ElCano Royal Institute, I would like to express my gratitude to INCIBE for inviting us to this event, and also to all of you for being here with us today, sharing so many ideas. ElCano Royal Institute has a cyber policy program that tackles not only security aspects, but also all those aspects that go together with them, such as regulation, technology, training, research. And these policies that goes always together with cyber aspects has not only risk elements, but also chances, opportunity elements. Cybersecurity is interesting for us, and if cybersecurity works properly, we will obtain a development and a better quality of life for the users. And this is why we need to take an approach to cybersecurity not only from the point of view of the risk, but also from the opportunities that cybersecurity offers us, and always from the point of view of our contribution between the public and the private sector. But I'm going to speak about a risk that is called hybrid threat, and who's behind this threat and the way they act in order to see the problems we are going to face in the future. I'm going to take an approach that is related to cybersecurity, but apart from speaking about the general government, institutions, authorities, etc., I'm going to focus on companies and individuals. In the previous days, you have already heard some very important presentations, but I believe that it's important to highlight the role of these threats for companies or for the daily routine of regular people. In this table we see here, we can see how all of us were at the beginning concerned of what was going on the cyber scene, when public services and critical infrastructures were attacked, and databases from the government were also attacked. Official information was leaked, and we saw some agents coming from the state or individual agents that were trying to reveal secrets or compromise several different institutions. This is what led to cybersecurity. That meant actions promoted by agents that affected to national security. Threats stands for the agents, not for the actuation methodology. Terrorism is not a threat. The threat is actually the people that are behind this terrorism, and they might be eco-terrorists or Daesh, etc. Therefore, I would like to highlight this column, which is called agents, because the number of agents and the sources of the threats are increasing every day. And after this first stage, and together with the conflicts that were arising in Eastern Europe, Russia developed what is now called hybrid war, that is sometimes confused with hybrid threat. Hybrid war is a way of making war that combines what the traditional means of war, but also new elements, and therefore the governments use this hybrid war, but also groups of insurgents, such as ISIS in Syria. This is a way of war itself that combines arms with actions in cyberspace, information, etc. And this war on information that tries to present the battle to the opponents and try to manipulate what is actually going on in order to affect the enemy is actually what we understand by hybrid war, and it affects national defense and is the main concern of the of our armed bodies in cybersecurity issues. But together with this agent, we have new stakeholders that will be included inside of what we call a hybrid threat, because besides states, beside individuals, right now we have new elements such as criminal groups, terrorist groups that use these same tools together with different states. Sometimes they support them, sometimes they reach some aims for them. But what is key with these new hybrid threats is that there are several different actors connected with one methodology. There are several different activist groups from different ideologies with different objectives. There have been new platforms with facilitators and people that do business facilitating these kind of processes. They provide tools to those who want to use cyberspace as an aggressive platform, and also information networks that are created with the aim of disinformation and hybrid threats. These new actions and these new agents affect, of course, national security. And we need to be optimists regarding institutions, governments and systems, because they have managed to obtain several tools and strategies in order to act against them. Nevertheless, this kind of hybrid threats that states can relatively resist affect economical stability from companies and also affect the daily routine and business possibilities. And this crucial aspect of hybrid threat is not only aimed to the higher spheres, but it affects us all, and this is something new. In this respect, one common feature of all of these agents is that they do not have any kind of moral or legal restriction. They don't have our same criteria. They are predators. They see some opportunities at the cyberspace that we are not able to see. And they act in coordination with informal structures, creating networks, and they combine formal and informal aspects, and domestic and external methods. They have structures that coordinate. We are seeing lately how states turn to proxies or facilitators, which are technical groups, companies, etc., in order to defend their interests. This strategy is typical from hybrid threats, but what makes it difficult to fight against them is the fact that none of the states, none of the societies or companies have such a flexible hybrid structure that would allow us to respond to these threats. We have several different response structures that are coordinated in some aspects, but are also not enough coordinated in some other aspects. And therefore, we are not protected. So, these kind of structures must be framed in a context that allows them to grow up. So here we have the hybrid context. We have entered a competition process on which states protect their interest, their technological sovereignty, and also the economical and trade one. Our states have been traditionally subordinated to an international order and have been forced to observe multilateral regulations, but these agents are able to see opportunities in this hierarchy. And these states face that the inexistence of a world order, face the lack of hierarchy and the lack of regulations. And if we see what is being done regarding cybersecurity at the international level, we can only find companies, codes, or countries that have similar values, but there's not a relevant regulation, because there are the states that I have mentioned before, Russia, China, the United States, and their companies, the ones that do not want to have a regulation that limits them, at least during their process towards global hegemony. Maybe when they reach their objective, they will turn again to this kind of systems in order to limit the access of third countries to their domain. But cyberspace lacks order, and in this context, hybrid and informal aspects, aggressive aspects, have actually a lot of space to flourish. They also take profit of the crisis of the mass media, because before, information received by society used to have some filters, and agency, communication media, news agency, etc. used to publish and send information that was actually proved. But today, due to economical reasons, but not only economical reasons, these chains are on crisis, and the information that we get is a lot of times hasn't passed any kind of filters, and sometimes they are just ideas taken from private blogs or platforms that are multiplied throughout social networks by trolls. And this communication is not looking for real fact, but only flows, because flows define the income. So the companies pay for the flow, and therefore fake news and uncertain news generate more income than true facts. This is why social networks communication is more effective than media, traditional media, because they don't have enough authority, or they do not have enough resources to reach immediately or immediate communication, and modern societies prefer social networks. And reality reflected on these networks is not real, actually, but nobody cares about this, because each one of us, in our own bubble, believe what we want to believe. And this is actually what is affecting us today. This information addressed to specific audiences is what we want to listen. We don't want to listen to news that disturb us, that affect us, or that goes against what we already believe. And in these media actually take advantage of this. We have a technological disruption that you already know about because you suffer from it on a daily basis in your companies, in your daily life. We have the fourth industrial revolution, we have robotization, automatization, artificial intelligence, and these new breaches to the protection systems that we have create new vulnerabilities and new ways of acting. So we need to secure more and more elements in our companies and in our daily routines. At the beginning, we were only concerned by information and communication systems, but right now we are concerned by all that is involved in production processes, in our way of communication, etc. And this technological disruption and this acceleration is small if we compare it with what's in store, because until right now, when we spoke about information and propaganda, we were speaking about states or persons that had a face, or maybe without a face, because we don't know exactly who they are. But of course, we always thought there was a human being behind all of that. And this is not true anymore. And what's in store for us is that this disinformation operations and influence operations that try to undermine companies' reputation are being designed by computers and artificial intelligence and computational training. And this is something that we as human beings cannot be aware of unless we are prepared for it. We have several different examples nowadays. For example, artificial intelligence programming is being done in such a way that it overcomes the filters that we establish. We are not going to have the news that we want to listen to in the same way as successful books and films are written and filmed, depending on the audience that is going to read them or watch them. And this is something that we are not taking into account. We used to know that there are risks in cyberspace, but the fact that we need to doubt from everything that we perceive is something very difficult for us to understand. And cyber attacks are here to stay. All the analysis, all the reports show that these kind of attacks are increasing, both in quality and in quantity. And maybe we are detecting them better than before, but it's also very difficult to support a system that forces you to use your own resources in order to defend yourself from these elements. And at the same time, the aggressor is only focusing on a single aspect, on a single breach and a single opportunity. And this increase is due not only to the increase of agents, as we have already seen, but also to the improvement of their profile. The number of people that are actually well trained regarding cybersecurity is increasing. It's not increasing enough to cover all our protection needs, but also it is increasing in order to nurture this kind of groups, because they require technical profiles. They will always be able to pay them more, and they have the resources to cover their needs. And therefore, the attacks are going to continue. So what can we do if, in case there is something that we can do in order to remain in this gray area that is not war, is not either peace? Cybersecurity is not something that we can stop from one event to another. We need to keep on working on this kind of issues. In the first place, first of all, we will need to change the government system in order for public and private contributions to gain more importance. Until now, since the national security approach was the main one, this collaboration took into account that the main part was a responsibility of the people in charge of cybersecurity inside the different institutions, authorities, organisms, etc., and sometimes with private stakeholders. But to the extent on which cybersecurity is so important, these private stakeholders would have to start a more aggressive dialogue in order to establish which are the regulations that will decrease the level of risk, but also increase the level of economical profit. And this collaboration is still to be developed. And it is actually possible that the new national cybersecurity strategy, a new mechanism that activates private sector motivations inside this strategy in order to include the economical cybersecurity aspect as well. But in order to have a good dialogue and an efficient collaboration between the public and the private sector, we also need to have a comprehensive approach that allows us to unify voices, criteria, recommendations and proposals, because otherwise administration will always face a lack of counterparts, and this is why they will turn to the most powerful entities or those that have personal similarities, but they won't turn to critical services operators, digital operators, etc. So cooperation here in Spain and in other countries has worked very well, and all the experience that we have in matters of critical infrastructures protection prove this that I'm saying. But experience also shows us that cooperation can only reach as far as their resources reach, and this is why there are things that our national cybersecurity system cannot achieve. And what we also see is that private stakeholders have more resources, but they don't have this capacity in order to do so. Sometimes this dialogue just does not happen. Another requirement in this asymmetric environment on which business is going to be developed and in the future is, as I was saying, the requirement for the companies of increasing their autonomy margin. Because until right now, we were living depending on what the government could do for us or the companies could do for us. But in this threatening context, threats are not the same for every single actor, and companies must know and must be aware of the specialization they must have. Because not all the aspects they need will be found in the government level, and this is important because in a hybrid threat environment and technological revolution, we need to leave behind the idea of the concepts we had before. What does actually need to be guaranteed is security that at the beginning was kind of physical and afterwards analogical, and right now we have cybersecurity and we are moving towards digital security. Digital security will be the main aspect in the future. And of course we need to turn to states for something. Important companies and not so important companies have been turning to governments and states during the last weeks. I think you all have seen how the national cybersecurity strategy in the United States and many elements in the Congress are asking the government not to attack companies in the United States, because until right now our main concern was to protect ourselves, to recover ourselves, but at this point the state is asked to act and repress this kind of acts. The methodology can be an agreement between different governments, such as the one between the United States and China, but it is important that this is performed. It's not important if we have enough measures, from sanctions to measures that are taken when the attribution level is low, until the ones that are made when this is high. But we still need to include offensive measures, because otherwise these agents that are behind this hybrid threat will act without punishment and they will work for free. And it's not necessary to punish the source of the crime, but we need to ensure that somebody in the system is also going to suffer from the consequences. And I would like to close my presentation with one thought. We are living in a moment of technological disruption, and not only technological but also regulatory. But the important aspect of awareness-raising activities such as the one carried out by INCIBE is not only to make people see a comprehensive program, but also to scan the horizon. This is to say, to see into the future. And this situation for companies that have not a long-term point of view an accelerated business model is very important, and we need to change our mind framework to understand our current context, but not only from a point of view of risk, but also looking at the opportunities to the extent companies can overcome this kind of threat and make their business model grow with them. Once again, thank you very much to INCIBE and to all of you for being here today with us, and we are here in case you have any kind of doubt or question. Thank you very much.